All right, good morning, everybody. So we already started today's daf by doing the Mishnah. So the main part of the Mishnah starts off with being, the Lashon is actually quite confusing, but Shutun Shenadru Hana Zemizeh. So basically, the Mishnah was talking about a case, two partners, let's say Lo Chatzir in front of their house, and we'll discuss in terms of the size that we touched upon a little bit with an explanation of the Mishnah. But l'chara means that shenadru hana zemizeh, each one got upset with the neighbor and says, "I will not get hana from you. I will not get hana from you." So zak the Gemara iboilu, but naju pligi. Are we just talking about a case of basically they get upset with their neighbor and they each make a neder? I'm not going to benefit from you. However, hidiru zedzeh, but what if? Right? What if the situation was almost flipped? What was the situation that instead of them answering themselves and them basically bringing upon themselves the potential isser or a violation of the neder, right? Maybe we're talking. What about a case of where they basically answer the other person from getting hana from mine? So me, and do we say benadu the pligi only in the case of benadu the pligi? When they say, you know what, I'm not going to benefit from you. But maybe in a case where they ask the other person, that it's different. Because when you bring it upon yourself, that really, so if you bring it upon yourself, then even though technically you can say brera, and you can say that basically every person each partner when they bought it, they bought it to use it at one time. But we're going to punish you. We're going to penalize you, right? Because you could potentially violate, because you're basically subjecting yourself to depend upon this brera to say that you can use it. We'll say, you know what? Too bad for you. You brought this upon yourself, therefore you're usher. However, when the other person answers me, right? If it's me and Levi answers me from using the field, then maybe why should I be penalized? Maybe we should say brera there, and therefore I could use it. I'm still not getting enough from him. And therefore it's like I do not feel about there is that, or maybe even a case when they say you're also to use mine and you're also to get enough from me. Maybe they also argue in that case. So Toshma, come on, listen. Oh yeah, where's that? Is that the office?
No, that's the emergency phone. It's a Sunday.
Yeah.
7:05.
The people who already learned that.
Yeah, sure. So Tashma.
He's online.
So Tashma haya echad man meidan mechaveru. So let's look at the case of the Mishnah where he was meidan mechaveru. Upligi rabban. So over there, he's meidan mechaveru. Over there, Pashtus, maybe we're talking about a case where he says you cannot go ahead and get enough from me only one way. And nevertheless, it says that Solar Rabbanan stick to their terms and said the guy is such an enter. So Gemara says, no, Tani Noder Mechavera. The guy makes a neder upon himself. Since he's making it upon himself, then we can penalize him and say, you know what, you can't rely on Brera, we're not going to allow that. And therefore, you basically forbid yourself from getting hanaf in the land. And Achanam Mistabis, that's logical to say that we're talking about that he makes the neder himself, to answer himself, as opposed to his partner answering him from using the land. Why is that? Because the Sefer says, but we force him to go ahead and sell his portion. So another who, if he's the one making the neder, and therefore he potentially could violate it, and therefore we should make him sell a tiny kaif. That's why we force it. The other guy made the neder about him. My kaif is so. How many is that? Right? It's like an understand me. He didn't do anything. The other guy said, why should I be forced to sell my portion? Because he says I can't get enough from the joint land. Fine, period. Bottom line. So Amar Rabban Amar Zeiri says Rabban Ibn Zeiri. To the page, thank you. Oh, you're home. He's actually home today.
He's on. He's actually. What's that?
Yeah.
No, yesterday.
He's sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
When Rabbi Rosner was giving the daf, all of a sudden people said turn the page.
Nah, my wife went to Florida.
Guys from fresh air.
Yeah, guys.
I was just in recording in progress. It started off. So I was good, you know.
At least you guys didn't get
Babysitting.
All right, very good. So machlekes, machlekes sheyesh but kadei chaluka. So machlekes is now. So let's say we're dealing with a parcel land. Now there's two types of parcel land. One is basically one that is large enough to be divided in two, and to have two usable chatzeros, one for each partner. And that would be something that has yesh badin chalukah. I think each one needs to have at least dalal amos. But something less than that, they cannot divide it. So if it's something, so let's see. So machlekes b'sheyesh badin chalukah. Maybe the machlekes over here is whether breira works or not. Is only the case of when the parcel is large enough, and therefore you could say that if it's large enough, so one says there is no din breira, one says there is breira. One knows if they go ahead and divide it, then it would be like each one they owned it the entire time. Aval eba kadei chaluka, but divra kol mutter. But if there's too small to divide it, then you must say that it was always purchased, never with any sort of intention for it to be divided, always for them to be partners in it, 50-50, and then always when they're going to head and use it, basically the mindset was that when I purchase it and I need to use it, whatever I'm using is 100% mine. Well, let's find another case of where something cannot be divided and is quote unquote owned by two people. When it comes to basic Knesset, it's owned by the townspeople. So everyone in the town is really partners in the ownership of the basic Knesset. And so therefore, okay, so now you want to say that, remember, if there's a case of hana from one another, right? We said yesh badin chalukah, then divrei kol mutter. Everyone says, okay, but since I own it, then it can't be divided. It's like when I'm using it, the area I'm using is 100% mine, and therefore it's fine. However, now we go to the Mishnah. If two people have a nether from one another, so then they're forbidden to use the Beis HaKnesses. Well, what do you mean? The Beis HaKnesses is like something which has ein badin chalukah. And in the Beis HaKnesses, we say it can't get hung up from each other. So therefore, by him being the Beis HaKnesses, everybody has a portion, every parcel. Therefore, I'm getting enough from him, so they're against the Beis HaKnesses. So the same should be when it comes to ein badin chalukah. Salam Rav Yosef, Amraziri, machlekes she'ein badin chalukah. The machlekes says there is no din chalukah. I was talking about a very small parcel of land that cannot be divided. The Tanakama, the Rabbanan hold that each person there is no breira at all, right? And therefore everybody owns each part of the land, which would stem with that which was said in that mission over there, and therefore they're always forbidden. And Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov would hold that there's breira, and therefore that would work. But if there's din chalukah, then everyone would hold aser, because in this case, then you don't know, right? If it's large enough, then perhaps that you don't know where. What was that?
Then just divide it.
Right. So then it would be divided, but it's not divided yet. And therefore, since we don't know divided, and we don't know if they will divide it, because the partners can go ahead and potentially buy the partnership. So therefore, you can't say it's as if it was divided from the beginning, and therefore, divrei kol would be aser. And Amar Rav Huna halach Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov, v'chein Amar Rav Eliezer halach Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov. Halach Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov that holds of this din of breira. Fine. Next case, so guy says, I'm not going to go ahead and get hana from you. The guy is a landowner, business owner, and he has a parcel of land. A merchatz rent out to the city mikvah, or the city merchatz, bathhouse, the shvitz. So as long as the Mishnah says if the guy is not owner, basically if he's not an owner in the operations, right, of the operations of the bathhouse, then it's mutter to go ahead and use it. The kama tvisas yad. What does it mean that tvisas yad? Some Rav Nachman, lemechza, l'shlish, lavi, right, a half, a third, a quarter. So at least a quarter, right? Obviously a half and a third are more than a quarter. So at least a quarter, that person has to have partnership, some sort of significant partnership in the LLC that operates, the bathhouse. However, when it comes to less than that, if it's a very small amount, 5%, less than 25%, then it's not considered like he's really part of the operation. He doesn't really benefit from your usage, and therefore there is no violation. Even if it's less, right? Even if it's less than a quarter, it's aser heichidami. So heichidami shar. Therefore, any amount, because any amount that you use, he does the ma'isa. He's a partner, and therefore he benefits. So Echidam would be the case of where it'd be permitted to Mekabel the Shari, the Mekabel Taska, basically when he's paid a flat fee. In other words, basically he's paid some sort of rent or some sort of uses or something just from the operation. So therefore, his rent is not coming as a percentage of the ownership of the usage. Rather, it's a flat fee. So he's not really benefiting, right? They're not benefiting one another, by him using or not using it, right? The people of the town or whatever it is, the ownership pays the guy, and therefore, so there's no, every time I use, there really is no, direct correlation to his hana.
I did ask her also yesterday, according to this, about shareholders. I own shares of Coke, and you're with their hana
Right.
from me. And according to this, stock dividend is not a set fee because it goes up and down depending on how much
Right.
profits made. So you'd have a problem. The other person would not be able to have enough from me because
That
you would not be able
shows,
to buy Coke
right?
because I'll be getting
That
stuff.
shows, right?
So it would be an issue in that case.
According to
According to
Abai.
Yeah, most people don't order a quarter of a company shares.
Yeah.
It's not in a public company. So.
All right. Next page. I don't know is this where you guys got up to? Okay, fine.
Yeah, another minute.
You
Okay, I said 17, right? Did I say 17? Oh, wow. Okay.
We don't have to.
Oh, yeah.
No.
So what was the previous case? I'm with Chavera.
Here's somebody coming. There he is. See, there's this one person.
Okay.
Mark
so
sent his money.
we just finished the previous stuff.
On the 17th.
Fair. I was telling stories about the Silverstein. You missed.
Yeah.
So go back. That's not recording. How was yesterday?
Good.
They have non like that.
The other Dafyomi people who don't come to our.
No, but I'm saying where they're non.
Yes.
Yeah.
There were some people that had started Yerushalmi with him. They said,
There are like 40 people at the documentary, and then for
These
shows are probably 80 people.
yeah.
What do you speak about then?
Most of them.
Leadership lessons for motion.
Gotcha. You said Marcus coming? Alan?
Yeah.
Mark, you there?
He's coming.
Here he comes.
We're waiting for you.
We just finished it up. Okay.
All right, like.
We were well represented.
Good. I heard. Even without coffee.
No, I got coffee.
Maybe they had the
I had my own
instant or whatever. Yeah. All right, so the next case of the Mishnah, Mem Zayin, top of Mem Zayin, Amud Aleph, first word. But so it quotes the Mishnah where one basically gets upset with his friend. Turn the page, Mem Zayin, Amud Aleph, right? Right? So he specifically points out your house for entering, so therefore basically it's dependent on it being his house.
Right.
Versus if he says this house by Zeh, that it's on the house itself, that even if it transfers ownership, he's still forbidding himself to that house. Now, so boy avime kaidam lebayis zeh shata nichnas. So a little bit different. Over here, we're talking about the guy owns the house. Okay, I own the house. I get upset with Levi, and I say this house that I happen to own, right, is aser from entering shata nichnas, right? So basically, I'm forbidding him from this house. Now, if the guy dies or sold to somebody else, mahu. Do we say Adam Aiser Davar Shibashusai? Hello? Do we say that a person can answer something that he owns in his rishus, i.e., the house at this moment, to be answered to somebody else, even after the lifetime or when the guy owns this? Right? It's one thing for me to answer an item, doesn't matter who owns it, upon myself. I can answer anything in the world upon myself, doesn't matter who owns it. Right? And I can only answer items on somebody else if I own them. But can I answer them while I own it to even to go through it, right? To go beyond, right? and always be us or the person.
When you ask for something to somebody else, how do you know that somebody else knows that it's not certified? You know, I say, I don't like it, I say, you're.
Well, they have to be, I guess, informed. Yeah. They would have to, right, they would have to be no. But if I say his coat is usher upon you, that's meaningless. I can say my coat is usher to you, but I can't say it's right, yeah. But they would have to, they would have to be, right.
Informed.
Yeah.
somehow.
You know,
I mean, it would-
get shut down.
Well, I never, I was talking, I'm here, sorry.
So kind of mesa. So alachamau. So Adam, I said davar shevashusa l'kshiat v'shusa alo. So can he go ahead and ask for something while it's in the shus for even beyond the shus or not? Some Rav Toshma come listen. Aimer lebano. Kainam shiatan and aliyah. A guy says to his son, "You are forbidden to get any out from me." Umeis, and then the father dies. So Yeshua, he does go ahead and benefit because the guy died. You're not benefiting for him. It's after he died. However, he says, if he says, I'm going to you can't get any hana from me, from none of my assets, nothing I own, while it's during my lifetime or after my lifetime, umeis, lo yushen, he cannot go ahead and inherit it. So shmami no, adam aisir dava shebashusa l'kshiyatza meshusa shmami no. Do you learn from here that a person does have the power, basically, to forbid something, since he owns it now, to forbid the other person from benefiting it even after it's no longer in his possession.
You know, we say we're being masa something in the Torah. Torah says there's a halacha.
By Yerusha, right?
So then they asked him, he had this few dots.
Yeah.
I asked the question on the road there.
Right. To be all right. So over here, right? He's not going against the halachas, saying that he doesn't go ahead and inherit it. Right? There's a lot of times when you want to go ahead and pass over or change it, he doesn't get pishnaim, right? So it's not
The other inheritance.
Right.
Steinsaltz brings the run, who says that basically he's not us. It's not that he doesn't get the Yerusha. The son gets the Yerusha. He's just usher and using it.
Right,
Yerusha
he has
still passes down.
right. So it's not directly.
That's lovely.
Didn't the Gemara a few blot ago make the distinction that he specifically said because they asked the same question, they wrote the
Right.
same run.
Yeah.
So why is it a riot now and it wasn't a riot last week?
It's
That
interesting.
what that
I mean, you could just say
Right.
this isn't a riot. Adam, the question of whether someone can be
Right,
us
yeah.
maybe that case is different because it specifically
says
specified
b'chayv
b'chayv
moso.
moso.
But over here, maybe what he means, right? So the question is really, what is he intending by saying by is zeh?
Yeah.
Is his intentions to be moisa b'chayev, or right? Because that's another thing. A, are those his intentions, and B, even if it's his intentions, does it work? It's like so it's both things. Because by Nadar, we have to know what the guy intended.
The Ran also goes on and says, so if Yaakov forbids Reuven to get it,
Right.
So Reuven gets the stuff because it's still his by the
Right.
Question is if he owes Shimon money, can Shimon seize those assets now?
Right.
And so he says you actually
That's the
can.
yeah.
He says that's the run. That's
Right,
the run
right.
keeps going into that.
Yeah. What does it mean technically? Right. That he doesn't. Right.
Right. Because it's still his Yerusha.
Right.
So,
But he can't.
But he can't have
Correct.
enough from it. So how you go from there? Okay.
Satan Hasam Kaidem Peres Ha'elu Alai Kaidem Hein Alpi Kaidem Elapi. So a person says Kaidem for these Peros, usher upon myself or on my mouth, right? Or to the mouth. All those cases are usher. So he usher these Peros Ha'elu, these fruits, B'chalufeyam Uvidulehem, right? And those which are exchanged for these, those which grow from them. So basically, he's answering these fruits and anything that comes from these fruits. So Boiram Rachamo, Amar Kainem Peros Ha'elu Al Ploim. So he wants to do the same thing, right? These fruits upon somebody else, right? Similar, right, to what we had before. So, in other words, when it comes to answering upon somebody else, somehow. So me, I mean, do we say Gabi delay? However, Adam Oyster Peres Chavero Al Atzmo, Adam Oyster Davar Shalom Al Atzmo. When it comes to himself, since a person can go ahead and answer his friend's fruits upon himself, so therefore maybe he also has the ability to answer something that didn't exist yet, right? The Chilufeim and Gedulehan, right, don't really exist yet. We don't know what's being exchanged for yet. Right, and certainly nothing has grown from them. So does he have the ability? So since over there, when it comes to himself, he can answer something that's somebody else's upon himself. So maybe he can also ask her something shelo be'olam upon himself. However, gabe chavero, when it comes to his friend, since I can't go ahead and ask her somebody else's fruits upon somebody else, so therefore I can't also take something which doesn't exist yet, i.e. anything that comes from these fruits, whether it's chilufeyan, whether it's giduleyan, right, something that exchanged for them or that grows to them. Also, I wouldn't be able to go ahead and ask her al chavera. Oh, Dilma, or perhaps, what would we say? Maybe we'd say that really that was is exchange for them, right? Is really just like something that that came from them, right? So since these items really come from it itself, perhaps it's still in existence, right? And we could say that something that grows from it physically is the same thing. So perhaps even something which is exchanged for them also, right, would be okay, right? It's interesting to note that, right, that the gidulehan, right, is treated more like the pears itself, as opposed to the chilufeyan, which is lecher in the first part. The chilufeyan was gidulehan was more similar to the chilufeyan than over here on the other side. So the Gemara wants to know: can someone answer something? Right? Does it come not only for the item itself, but that which comes from and potentially even something that is exchanged for it? I'm sorry?
There's no limit.
Well,
Person gets the fruit.
right.
He plants one of the pits, and that
He
makes
got-
more fruit.
So he could be
orchards.
right. So potentially that would that would be in that case, right? So since those came from the Giduleya. So let's see the first attempt. So we'll go through two attempts, right? Mem Zayin and Beis. So Tashma, come listen. Ha'aymer le'ishto. One who says to his wife, Kaina, Shani Nana, Law. So he basically tells a woman, basically it is forbidden for you to go ahead and get hana from me, right? Obviously, he has certain obligations that he has towards his wife, but he's saying, I'm not going to go ahead and provide for you, right? Perhaps, she'll go ahead and support herself from that which, from her wages. So what happens? So lava she can go off to the store, take money from basically the store, run up a credit right in the store on the account, and then the store, then the makolet, store owner can go to the husband and collect from him. So what do you see over here? That she didn't go ahead and take money from her husband's hand to go ahead and buy fruit, right? Or food, whatever. She went to get the food, and then the husband, right, was charged and he paid for it. Okay, so now my timer. So what's the reason why the Baal Chov can go ahead and collect from the husband my timer? So my time. So by the Chayv Nifraim, lavish and right? Lav kigdulay. So we say in this case, we say no, that over here, by her, what is she really getting? She's not getting the food from him, right? She is taking, right? So she gets hana from something that was exchanged from his payment, right? So therefore, she's not getting direct hana from him. She's getting the chilufeya, right? That which is exchanged in its place. And therefore, right, since it was taken for that which is exchanged, so therefore we say that, you see Pashut over here, that this is not direct, right? She was also to get hana from him, right? So his items, but she's not getting hana from him. She's getting hana from the storekeeper, right? And the storekeeper, Derek Agad, has to be paid, takes from the husband, but she's not getting hana from him. So therefore the direct,
From her husband.
Chilufeyan. So that would be like the eyes is not chilufeyan. Chilufeyan.
And the other reason that this is allowed is because of the tumor. He has a financial obligation to do it.
To
Right. If you
Right,
made
so that's why I say it's a
if you made
package deal.
if you made a comment.
Right.
That you can't have any.
from if another individual.
Right, from another individual, but there was a contractual arrangement that you would be going over, you wouldn't be able to do it either.
The Mishnah like
Right.
2 days ago, we can say to the Chenveni, like, yeah, just let that person just get.
Right. So, right. So in this case, but we see over here. So
Unless
let's
it's
see the Gemara's answer. So the Gemara's parents. So
Unless-
Amar Rava,
Unless it's specified in the neder.
the what?
Unless it's specified about this.
No, it was never specified in the standard.
So
It was never specified. So Amar Rava, Duma l'chadchilu d'loi, if you oven, right? Really, it's not direct, right? It's not direct. It's not a clear violation. Okay. So in this case, nevertheless, the husband is mechuyev, like Mark was touching about, right? There are now it could be a different situation that the woman has the right, right? To say keep your, out in terms of the wages, or the husband, right? To say, if her if her support is enough, but since he is technically obligated, so perhaps over here means lichatchila doesn't work. But in other words, it's not really. There is no clear isser. It's not a complete violation of saying that if he goes ahead and collects, he's violated this neder that for sure now. But it could be that really it's only midrabanan that the guys are not chilufeya, and in this case we'll allow the chilufeya. But in generally lichatchila we don't allow for it. So therefore, it's not a proof that she's that in this case, because really technically, yes, it was not part of the nether. She's not getting hanafrim, right? And therefore, we'll allow it because of A, it's only drabanan, and B, that the husband is obligated to go ahead and support the wife. So Tashma, come listen. Hamakadesh ba'oila ein mekudeshes. Now, by trees, right? The first 3 years, right? The fruits are forbidden for anah called orla. So one goes ahead and he takes the fruit that was off the tree. Since there's also hana, it's considered to be valueless. And in order to go ahead and marry a woman, has to give her something which is worth at least a pruta. And therefore, he gives her something which is less than pruta because it's valueless. So despite the fact that it looks like a beautiful pineapple, it's worth nothing and eina mikudeshes. However, if he went ahead and machran and he sold it, he wasn't supposed to, but he sold it, the kiddush b'demehen. And then he goes ahead and he tries to marry her, right, with this item. Hareza mikudeshes. So she's married. So that money that he got exchanged, he got $10 for this fruit that he wasn't allowed to sell. He got $10 for it, and he's allowed to marry her. So what do you see over here? That even though this item was usher, the chilufei, and that which is exchanged for it, you can get hana, right? So it's like a different matter. So my answer is really lechatchila. He's not allowed to go ahead and do it, and therefore it's still considered the kedusha really is part of the orla, and there is some kedusha within the exchange. However, the oven, but if he goes ahead and does it, technically, right, it's not the orla. It's only something that came in lieu of it, so therefore it doesn't have the kedusha of kedusha's orla, right? To say that it's valueless, there is l'maisa some value to it. So even though it came b'isser, nevertheless, it would be valid, and therefore we would say that we have to be chayshesh, right, for this mikudeshes. I guess perhaps even on a deraisa level, but we have to be concerned. But if he does go ahead, we do say that she is mikudesh. But nevertheless, it's not it's not a full proof that chilufeihem and giduleihem run along with the peiros of a person. Fine. Nai Mishnah. We're trying to do the Mishnah now. All right. Nai Mishnah and the Mem Zayin base. So Hareini Alecha Cherem.
Nai Mishnah. The girls like that.
Yeah. I was waving to his Avrami's girls there. They're paying attention. All right. So Hareini Alecha Cherem. So a guy says to somebody else, right? Behold, I am a cherem upon you. So Hamuder Aser, then the one who went ahead So I'm upon you to be as a cherem. So therefore, the guy who basically who made the nether is usher to the other guy. The other guy is usher to have hana from him. Hare atalai cherem. If you are basically to me a cherem, so another usher, right? The one who made the vow to, right? So, or the one who made the vow, he is usher to get hana from his friend, as explained. Hareini alecha v'atalai. So now here's the point that we're trying to get. If you're usher to me, right, and I'm usher to you, shneim asur, that both of them are usher. Shneim mutarim b'davar she'olei baba. So they're usher to get hana from one another, right? The things that are together. However, they are mutter in a davar she'olei baba, something which the people used to be. They used to come from Babel. Regularly used to come up. We'll soon see what that is.
Is there significance to the?
Why Babel?
No, cherem here as opposed to konam or some other word.
No. Just in general, right? Yeah. Shtei right. Hanasa Allah kichem shel bedek habayis. V'gala mari b'stam charamim bedek habayis. Right. Fine. But they're mutter b'davar shel eilei Babel v'asurim b'davar shel eisayir. So when it comes to city things, within the municipality, those are usher, right? But when it comes to the common, basically of people the regel, right? Then those things are mutter. So let's see, because those things are not just partnered by these individuals who live together. It's part, this the world. And if it's the world, it's Hashem's, right? It's not necessarily theirs. And what are those things? The Babel, Tigayin, Harabayas, the Azaras. So the Harabayas is not considered to be, everybody is individually owned, the Harabayas, or the Azaras, the different chambers and courtyards. And also pits, I guess, that were dug in the water pits, the cisterns, right? The pasibirais and all those halachas, when people are the order for them to have water upon their travels. So they used to go ahead and have these wells. Those were made for everybody, all the travelers of the world. And therefore, it's no shaykhs, even though it might have been in their town. We'll say that's not for me and you, because, we have the nadarim. Rather, it's for those, for the world. Basically, was considered Oisair, Kagain Harachava, right? The town square, the Hamerchatz, and the Schwitz, right? These are publicly owned by the community, based on Knesses, Teva, right? In the Aron, Svarim, the different Svarim that they read from, Kaisev.
But that's a person who the motor, not the motor.
So in this case,
he owns it just as much other, so he should have the able to get it out. It's part of his,
right? So he says.
Right.
So we ask that what if
we memorize each
right.
other in the town square, the one person who not each other, I guess it because of each other, the person who was voter against the motor, he should be able to still use it because you can't motor something that I own. He owns part of that.
Right. So we had before, right? The question we first started today was, are we penalizing the person for bringing it upon himself, and therefore we say that the brera doesn't work, or maybe we even say that even if the other guy makes it, right, that if the other guy makes it, what does that have to do with me? Why should I be punished? I can still use it. Who is he to answer it? So even that side we want to know. Perhaps we could say it goes both ways. But in this case, it's interesting. We're not talking about where each one makes another, right? We're talking about a case where he says, one person is making the statement, right? Right. Right. So you're asking, right, how could a person basically, so I can just go to anybody and say, you're also getting any off from me, and basically asking him to use the shul, to use the, right. Right. Fine. All right. So let's see. So real quick, so we'll say, but what's the way to getting out of it? Basically, right? If he says that, when two people, right, are usher upon it, or if maybe they each can go ahead, they can go ahead and say, you know what? that we can write off our that which we own to a third party. If they basically have both these in place and they want to figure out a loophole. So basically they'll say, okay, that which I own will go to the Nasi. And that which you own will go to the Nasi. Therefore, neither of us are partners in the top shul. We can both go to shul, right? And we'll shake hands and try and be mad this nether. But that is a way of getting around this nether where he's kaisev chelka l'nasi. That's only if you want to make it better, because his portion he's giving to the Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, echad kaisev l'nasi, echad kaisev l'hedya. Really, you can write to the Nasi, you can write to an individual person. So why did you do it to the Nasi? So ma bein kaisev l'nasi, the kaisev l'hedya. What's the difference? Shai kaisev l'nasi ain't say l'zakos. Right? Perhaps the Nasi has, normally a person acquires something for somebody else. There has to be a kinyan involved. When it comes to the Nasi, we know there's special rules when it comes to hektish, right? There's always the Lamalo. So when it comes to the Nasi also, that he has superpowers of acquiring things. You want to give something, you don't necessarily have to go ahead and make a kinyan. The Nasi owns it right away. You don't need a kinyan, and therefore it's immediately this public property is now to the Nasi and no longer it's an individual's name. But as opposed to the hedyot, you do. No, it's not different. The Nasi is no different than the hedyot. So why to say the Nasi? Right? This is the way that the people commonly do it, right? Just to say it goes to the Nasi, and therefore that makes things much simpler. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, in Anshe Galot Tzrichen Lichtav Shekfar Kasu Avisein Al Yidei. Rabbi Yehuda says, people in the Galot, don't worry about it. Because basically all of the assets are already all written over to the Nasi, and it's not individually owned by all, and therefore you don't have to worry about such a nether in the Gala. All right, we'll stop here. Tomorrow morning, Mitzvah Shem, we will continue from here.